Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. How are you doing today? It's Steve here alongside Mr. 9320, the director of football. Did we decide you're the director of football over there? I can't decide what your title was.
I don't know,
I'm
but I'll take that.
director of football at 9320, the manager, the chairman, whatever, the CEO, all the things at once. Mr. Ahsan Naeem. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Steve. I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. We were both chatting about how tired we were off air for life and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to chatting to you today because it's we've got a lot to try and work through, a lot to try and get through, because it's confusing and a lot of
Or
people
not a lot to get through.
or not a lot
If
to get through.
if you
Yeah, which
believe
is
City.
also not a lot, which weirdly makes it a lot. Like there's a lot. It's a weird mess in the Manchester City world. Once again, if you don't know who this gentleman is alongside me, it's Ahsan from the 9320 pod. Ahsan and the team over there. I do wonderful work. They do like erudite, passionate, thorough, witty, excellent work over the 9320 pod. Please check them out in the link in the description below. It's the cost of a cup of coffee for a month, Literally, I'm not even exaggerating. I went to Starbucks the other day. I got a coffee, £5.50. I couldn't believe it. I actually felt
Well, there
like
you go.
I actually felt that's insane. 9320, a much better subscription. That's 1,000,000,000% honest. And the reason I say that is because I sometimes get caught in a sort of echo chamber as myself, as a single, as a person, as a one person channel. And I realize the more you listen to other people who are passionate and have knowledge of the subject that you love about, the more your own opinion changes and evolves. And I think it makes for a better, more passionate experience for watching football. So give it a check out. They do wonderful work over there. So Asa, my pleasure, mate, always. So we were going to talk last week about Ederson. You text me saying, should we do a video next week? Because at that point, it looked like Ederson was about to leave. I mean, it just steamrolled, didn't it? We saw the all the reports coming out. It felt like it was going to happen when you connected the dots from last season, with Ortega signing a deal and Ederson looking a little bit off towards the end of last season emotionally for whatever reason. It felt like it was going to happen. Now, this morning, I don't actually know who said it. It could be Sam. It could be someone else. The Athletic, anyway, have said that City expect both De Bruyne and Ederson to stay this summer, despite reports of agreements being reached on personal terms with Saudi Arabian clubs. What are your top line thoughts when you see this roller coaster of information or misinformation? We don't know what it is. How are you feeling about it all?
So we should probably start with the idea that City have been pretty open about the fact that anybody who wants to go can go if they bring the fee.
I think that's true still as well, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there was an interview with De Bruyne, weirdly enough, a week or two ago, where he literally said that. He said, City are different to other clubs in that if you want to leave and you bring the offer, they'll never hold you against your will. So, bearing that in mind, City saying we expect De Bruyne and Ederson to stay is sort of neither here nor there, because if your policy is if you pay the dough, the player can go, well, we've seen that the Saudis have money to pay the dough.
I think the conclusion there is that they haven't asked yet, potentially. And if City expect to stay, it's because they haven't shown any interest in moving. But that could change like that, couldn't it? All they have to take is 1 day.
One of the things that I know happened last summer, and I don't know whether this is a Pep thing, but in general, I think that they prefer the players to go and see Pep and say, look, I want to go. So Mahrez did it. Cole Palmer did it. Laporte did it. I think Sterling did it the summer before. Sterling and Jesus did it before they left for
Zinchenko as well,
for pre-season. Sorry, before they left for their summer break. So I think that we're in a little bit of a holding pattern until they begin to come back for pre-season training, and I think that then we'll get a better idea of how confident City can be, particularly of keeping Ederson. I think De Bruyne, in a funny way, is a different one because I don't trust. I almost don't trust what he's saying at the moment, because I almost get the feeling that he's trying to get City to make him an offer, and I also understand why players are very reluctant to go into the last 12 months of their deal without another contract. Because look, what happens if you get a bad injury in November, December that puts you out for a year? Well, then, that will seriously impact your future. So it will be interesting to see with Kev whether City, when he comes back, whether City come to the table with a conversation about an extension. And if they don't, whether there is really an offer from Saudi that he goes, all right, well, if you're not going to offer me a contract, then how much money do I need to bring to get a transfer?
No, I think you're right. And going back to the start of that point as well, I do think you're right. We don't know until the back in pre-season training, which by all accounts I think starts maybe next week or the week after. It's very soon anyway, because I think the reason that is because you look someone in the eyes, and I think that makes such a big difference. You talk to him like a man, man to man. Pep will outline his plans for the season. He'll probably tell him politely why they should stay. He's never going to force it, but he's going to say, you'll probably tell him, you're both massive parts of my plan still, blah, 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 blah. He'll talk about them. And I feel like it's easy to sit there and say, we all know what it's like in life. We can sit there and go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to say this. And when you actually see the person you want to talk to in real life, it's a lot harder to actually, to go through with something as drastic as upheaving your life like this way. So I don't think we know exactly where they fully stand. I think you're right. It is neither here or there until they've looked at each other in the eyes. They've talked to their partners, they've talked to their family, they've talked to Pep Guardiola, and they've seen their teammates again. It's a very, as much as the money is tempting, it's still a huge change in your life. It's not one to be taken lightly, and I do.
But the money is wild as well.
It's wild. I'm not saying they're not going to do it. I'm just going to say you have to consider everything. You have to speak to the manager first. You have to speak to your teammates first, and so on. And maybe not, but I feel confident about KDB. But Ederson, I'm not so sure. He's had a whole summer off to get Ederson. He's not been in the Copa America squad. He's been resting up. He's had a lot of time to think about this, and I do wonder. Look, Pep's been chilling. Pep's been everywhere. He's been in New York. He's been at tennis. He's been at Wimbledon. It's like they've both been off. I'm not saying they would have spoke yet, but you feel like a message could have been conveyed some way. Is that fair, or do you think it's entirely because they're back at training?
Oh, it's difficult to know. I think a lot of these things are a bit more political than we realize, in the sense that, so if you remember, the stories about Ederson and Saudi began almost as soon as the season ended, right? Yeah. So if you're City and you're looking at that and they're saying he's got an offer, he wants to go, well, you're going to be a bit like, all right, well, we don't need to say anything or do anything until somebody talks to us.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what goes on in the transfer market in general is smoke and mirrors, and a lot of it is done, far more of it is done through the media than we realize. Fabrizio Romano, for example, agents have got him on speed dial because they want their clients' names out there.
Yeah.
Because as much as we would like to think that there's some real expertise behind the scenes, I think sometimes a club will just read, oh, this player might be going here, and 100%. You've got him on your list, and it makes you move. So,
and we know that United more or less went back for Ronaldo because City were at one point considering that was exactly. Obviously that was a bit more than paper talk. But the clubs, look, I know for a fact that a lot of big clubs. I mean, you got to consider championship sides as well. They're still big clubs. They're multi-million-pound. A lot of clubs that you'd think would be organised. No, they still have old school football people there who sign people for vibes. They sign people as a FOMO. So that absolutely does happen. You're right. And the press is used to manipulate clubs into action, and it's 100% a thing. And there is probably games being played right now. We're not stupid. I think these quotes that come out from KDB, he's probably playing a game. He's a very smart man. And as Peter said in the chat, he sorts his own contract out. He's safeguarding his family. I think two things can be true at the same time. I think he's totally fine with the idea of staying in Manchester City and maybe a little pay rise for the next year or so. I think he's also totally fine taking £1 million a week or something stupid in Saudi. He's not a stupid man, KDB. And this is why I'm taking this whole thing with sincerity. I think there's a real threat of a last minute late transfer window bid that City would accept because the money is insane and KDB has that power to go, you're going to accept this. You told me you would, you know?
I think City. I think
by the way,
City.
just what thanks for the super chat from Nathan. By the way, he says thanks for the stream. Two handsome lads talking sense. Have a great day, chaps. Nathan, love you, mate.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you so much.
Thank
The
you
Man
very
City
much.
Discord. Go on, what you're saying.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think one of the weird things is that City find themselves in a little bit of a weird spot where I think that the position that they would probably like to buy a player in, they've probably got too many players in that position.
Yeah.
And I think that they're also cognizant of the fact that Calvin Phillips and João Cancelo represent a lot of money in wages and a lot of investment in terms of transfer fee. And they're both players that they desperately want to get rid of and get off the wage bill. I think that if you factor those two in, and then you go, all right, so us, Rodri, sat in Germany, we're all begging for another lad who can come and play in centre midfield and deputise for Rodri. But I bet City are looking at it and going, well, if we signed that lad, the value of Kovacic and Nunes plummets dramatically. Like if you suddenly go, all right, because there's not going to be enough minutes, I don't think. I think that already you saw last season, Nunes played very few minutes.
Was that down to perceived quality, not necessarily the space, though? You know what I mean?
Sure,
like,
but if it's about quality, then haven't you shit the bed because you bought a player who's not good enough, and now you're stuck with
I think that's accepted now. I think that's personally quietly accepted that we signed players that weren't right, and we've made a rod for our own back. I feel like if he was, I don't know. I'm trying to think of someone else who we didn't sign. I don't know. I can't think of these, but I feel like if it was someone more fitting than Nunes, then put it this way: Gundogan's still in the squad. He's played a billion times more. I mean, Rodri's getting a rest every now in that position. I think we know that, you know. And obviously that's an extreme example because that's Gundogan.
Yeah,
but I still think there's someone else. Say João Neves of his profile now is in the squad. He's probably playing damn more than Nunes does. I think so. So I wonder if it's not necessarily space. I wonder if it's. But then I guess you're on about. If you can't sign another because then there's space problem as well without selling.
It's the idea of how do you run your club efficiently, right? From a financial point of view. So what's inefficient is to add players to an area of the squad that feels a bit bloated, knowing that you probably need to get rid of one of those guys, but you want to get the best possible deal you can because you've just paid 60 million quid for Nunes, right? Or 55, whatever it was.
A lot of money anyway.
So you can't just throw him away. You paid 40 odd for Calvin Phillips. You've had to yard him having played barely any minutes. João Cancelo's been on the books for it feels like a decade.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like there is definitely. So to go back to what's going on right now, when I see the Athletic saying City don't expect any major outgoings or any major incomings, I think that's because they can't afford to be seen to be in the market until they get rid of someone. And they also can't afford to be seen to be desperate to get rid of someone. So part of what's happening right now is City are going, well, we're good. We don't need to do anything. We just won the league, right?
Yeah.
We just don't need to move. So if a club in Saudi wants Nunes, or a club in Italy wants Kovacic, it's like, well, we're not going to give you a discount because we're not desperate to sell them because we're comfortable with the squad the way that it is.
It knocks 10, 20 million off it, doesn't it? If you change that perspective, you know?
And again, if you look at the amount of what I just consider to be pure waste in terms of fees and wages in the last few years, like I don't think I can totally understand why they have created a situation that the only way to navigate out of it now is to play chicken. And it's basically to go, you know what? We're not going to do anything. We're just going to stand here, sit still and see what happens. Because if genuinely there's a club in Saudi that wants Kevin De Bruyne, well, you're starting at 75, 80 million pound minimum, I would say, right? That's a huge amount of money to bring in. If there's somebody who wants...
That's fair still. Look at his assist record last season. He's still an absolute
superstar.
100%. You'd probably ask him for 9 figures. I wouldn't be surprised if City say, well, we want 100, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, they were talking about that sort of fee for Mo Salah a year ago.
Yeah.
And then even somebody like Nunes, fine, he's not played much at City, but he's just been at the Euros, right? He's Portuguese international. You're not giving him away. If a club wants him, and bearing in mind you've paid 55 for him, you're going to want at least 45 million.
Absolutely, 100%. And the profile his age is that let's be honest, he'd probably run rings around that league as well, in midfield, with the pace of it and so
on. And we've not really discussed this, but like what you're doing with Rico Lewis, like he didn't play right back last season. He played centre mid. I think 90% of his minutes last season were in centre mid.
He's a better 8 for me for Manchester City than Nunes is, and that's not trying to be. I'm not trying to be harsh on that. I think he's more. What I mean by that, he's a better Manchester City 8. More suited. Like his pass and move, his England could do, if I'm being honest. But he like that. He's a pivotal season for Rico. I saw he's back at training yesterday, and I was actually sat there. I had a hopeful moment of where, like, what if this is his year? But at the same time, it could easily be not. It could be the exact same year, copy and paste again, where he plays 20 games. He has that spell where he plays 5 to 7 games in a row, and everyone thinks, oh, he's great. He disappears for 2-3 months. But it's a big year for Nunes. Not Nunes, sorry, Rico Lewis. And I think City are probably, they're aware of that. Big year as well for Oscar Bob, slightly different position, but you're aware of that. We've got the Cole Palmer, the cold truth of Cole Palmer staring us in the face, and not that City care too much about people moving on. They understand how football works. But they're questions that need answering. And you're right, it all does feed back into that same point of, managing the squad and managing it. And
can I ask you a question?
Of course you can.
So I think that we sort of, obviously we tried with Calvin Phillips to bring in like a Rodri like backup, and it didn't work out. Is there a solution in the squad? So just to give you one example, do you think that, I've said this a few times, if you're playing anybody from the bottom half of the Prem at home, surely you can play Kovacic and Rico together as a 2, have them sit deep, and then just let the attackers go and attack.
I 1,000,000,000% believe that. I obviously had that thread on Twitter last week, which I got, which people didn't. I think they were saying they thought I was saying that we're fine. We don't need a DM. I think we do. I still think we need someone of sufficient quality that City, can rely on regularly. But I do feel I don't buy this idea that we're sort of confusing because everyone's like, oh, but if we don't play Rodri, we lose. But then the other guy that we sign is still not Rodri. So and I don't feel like anyone we sign is going to come in and be. We've built a lot of expectation, myself included, on this savior that's going to come in and be perfect. It means Rodri can sit back and put his feet up and have a cigar and everything's be fine. That's not going to happen, by the way. The proof being Rodri. Anyone who comes in is going to take time to adapt to Manchester City Football Club. Look at Rodri. Rodri, the best player in the world right now, in my opinion, was also pretty bang average for a year or two for Man City because it took a long time to adapt.
Plodri. I remember his first season, people called him Plodri and said, I don't know what he's good at. Right?
And the point here is entirely the expectation management, because I think we're all doing this like, oh no, we have to sign someone. It's the only way we could possibly win a game without Rodri. We're being so silly here to presume this. Like, I know he's not perfect, but I find it very hard. Say you sound João Neves. He's a cracking young player, but he's coming from the Portuguese league.
He's not a 6.
He's not a 6, but I'm saying people want someone like him. He's not instinctively immediately going to be better and more fit to this Manchester City side than Kovacic is after a year being at Man City, because it's all about experience. It's all about knowing. And I think we need to manage our expectations here. And I'm actually critical of Pep on this a little bit. Like, I don't think it's impossible, and we've been sold this unintentionally, that we can't win without Rodri. And actually, that's not true. We did beat Luton a couple of times without him. And it's only Luton. But the point is, it's very possible to win a game without Rodri. But I think we have to put more into that plan B and make it a plan B. I feel like Pep was so scared of not playing Rodri that he created an environment where he felt like we couldn't win without him. And I actually think that's a bit of slight failing. I feel like everyone believes that it's Rodri or bust. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that. If you had a midfield of Kovacic, say Rico, or even Nunes, and Foden, Header, and De Bruyne, they would start for Bournemouth is the exact three. They would start for West Ham. Maybe not West Ham. They one or two switch there. They start for Luton. They start for Ipswich. They start for all these teams. It's that exact three, wouldn't they? So if they would start them, why can it not be good enough to beat these newly promoted
I think
teams?
it does come down. I think you're right. I think it just comes down to the fact that. So I think there's this. What's happened is there was that period where Rodri was suspended, right?
We weren't playing well for what it's worth,
and we just weren't playing well.
No.
And so it's like correlation doesn't imply causation, and in this instance, it's not because Rodri didn't play that means that whenever Rodri doesn't play, City can't win.
And I do think it's worth acknowledging that, but we don't have to be. We have to be 10 out of 10. 7 out of 10 should be more than enough with a 10 out of 10 around him. That's what I'm getting at.
It's, and also there's a little bit this thing of like, and it was a similar conversation with Ederson, right? Where people go, well, you can't sell Ederson because if you sell Ederson, you'll never be able to play the way that you currently play. And it's like, well, no, because the great managers, and Pep is the greatest, they adapt to the qualities of the players that they have, right?
So it's not 2 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, like we lost David Silva. You know, we had no De Bruyne for 6-7 months. You know, we had no striker for 2 seasons. You know, it took about a year or so to replace Vincent Kompany. Like, we absolutely can adapt. And look, I'm not saying it'll be plain saying, and I don't want that midfield against Arsenal or whatever. But what I'm saying is we cannot go into next season if we do not sign a midfielder that we deem suitable. And just Rodri, 70 games there, mate. I just don't believe that. We have to find a way to make it work.
So don't you think then that actually the onus is on Guardiola
1,000,000%.
to basically listen to what Rodri has said, heed his warning, and go, you know what? This is my plan. Come in at pre-season. This is my plan. Rodri obviously isn't going to be there when pre-season starts. Kovacic will definitely be there. Rico will definitely be there, right? So begin to formulate a plan for games where you can sit Rodri down.
Do you know when you do like what's it called? I can't. It's sort of like imagine a scenario. So Pep used to sit there and go, right, Rodri's done his cruciate. He's out all season. What do we do? And he needs to sit there and think about it. Plan for the worst. You have to do that. And it felt like the worst was always Rodri has to play every game. He's telling everyone.
And I've got here's
overtly that he needs a rest.
Yeah. So another question for you. So fine, I agree 100%. We need another centre midfield player, right? So who out there?
At least that's what I'm getting.
Who out there can you realistically go and buy who is good enough and proven enough, that you would say when we signed them, okay, we're sorted now. Like now we don't need to worry.
I know the profile, but I don't necessarily know the player. I have ideas who I'd want, but I feel the profile. And
who would you want?
Well, we know we both want. It's not going to happen, but he's a young lad from the place for Palace. I bloody love him, and he's not a DM. But the point I'm going to make is, I feel like we need a player that is going to play regularly alongside Rodri, because I don't think anyone who sits on the bench for 80% of the season, who comes in just to run around, they're not going to be up to speed. Yeah. The biggest problem, in my opinion, is that we saw with Rodri actually when Fernandinho was playing. You need someone who's going to play and play alongside him, so that when Rodri's not there, you can go, I'm just going to do what Rodri's been doing. I watch it every single week. We need someone who's going to play, who can do a 6 and an 8 role, essentially. We need someone who's not just a pure DM, because if he's a pure DM, they ain't going to be playing 90% of the time, and they're not going to be ready. And I think, like, if you'd had, if Phillips was a better player and actually could have played as an 8 and played often quite alongside Rodri, then when Rodri had a rest, he would have been totally fine to step into that role, and he would have brought in Bernardo alongside him, or Kovacic alongside him, or Rico, or KDB a little bit deeper, whatever. But the problem is, everyone presumes we're just going to sign a backup DM. No, it has to be a first team starter, in my opinion. People mention people like Kimmich. It's a great example of someone who's got experience.
That guy's on 350 grand a week.
I'm talking about profile, not necessarily money, but someone like that with a profile, of someone who understands you could play alongside him as a double pivot. The reason I mentioned Adam Wharton, not going to happen, £100 million easily. But Adam Wharton is a great example of someone who can play as an 8 alongside him. You could understand his game. And then imagine we had someone like him, and then Rodri couldn't play against Bournemouth at home. Wharton and Kovacic or Bernardo, someone like that, and you think that should be enough to keep the ball and get Stones, if he's fit, keeping the ball.
Definitely.
So I'm not saying it's be the same level, but I think we have to be pragmatic. And I do not want it to be just Rodri or bust again. It can't be that.
No, you know what pisses me off a little bit, right? City have pivoted away from what they were good at in the transfer market.
Midfielders.
So not just midfielders,
Yeah.
but in general, right? So Adam Wharton is effectively Leroy Sané when we signed Leroy. Leroy had one standout season in the Bundesliga. Yeah. City paid the money and signed him. And when they signed him, everybody went, oof, that's a lot of money for a lad that's played 20 senior games of football, something like that.
Yeah.
But they did it because they saw the potential and they went, you know what?
Sometimes it's undeniable, isn't it? Sometimes that ability is undeniable. You see it, and you see lightning in a bottle, and you just capture it, And you were absolutely bang on. He'd played barely a full season of football, and special. And I want to see that. I do want to see City. I mean, you could argue we have done it with Vardy or people like that.
But you know what? I'm done with like this sort of. There's a sort of age group of Premier League proven 24 plus players that they've started signing where I'm just a little bit like, you know what? Go back to what you were good at. You were good when you were finding Bernardo Silva, Leroy Sané. You were looking at Gundo at Dortmund and going, you know what? That's a bargain that we can pick up.
The age is important, by the way.
Young.
I think the age is important because, and you're talking about people like Nunes and maybe even Eze or whatever. I don't know how you feel about him, but there's a bunch of like mid-20s footballers that I don't feel they're ever going to be as special as a Gundogan, simply because I don't think they get there early enough. I think there's an element of, I mean, you can get better. I'm not going to be stupid. I'm not going to say, but look at Fernandinho. Look, he got with Pep at 28, 29, and he became brilliant. But I would say Rodri got with Pep a lot younger, and he became a genius. And I do wonder, imagine a 23-year-old Fernandinho with Guardiola. That's a different kettle of fish entirely, in my opinion. Because I do think time and age is, I think you can learn bad habits, can't you, by 26, 27? And I want someone who's going to come in 21, 22, show talent, who's going to absorb it like a sponge. Because when you're that young, you absorb information, and you haven't learned too much yet. I don't want them to learn too much. I want them to learn from Rodri, from De Bruyne, from Bernardo, from Foden, from Guardiola and all these coaches, because it's the best place to learn. Elite talents develop best around elite talents. And as much as you see players like Eze, I go, you know what? I'd take him at City. But do I think I got to say I'd take him. I don't say I'd get excited. And for a reason, because I feel like they're good players, but I don't ever think they're going to be a genius, because I don't know if they've gone too far, and maybe I'm wrong there, but it feels that way for me.
I think for me, so I love Eze, and of course, like I would have loved for City to have signed him, but I think that sort of where I've landed now, I look at the Rodri position and I look at what is best. What we need now is what is best to complement Rodri, and I think that if you look at Gundogan when he came into the City squad, one of the things about him was he was a bit of a unicorn because he could play as a 6 and he could play as an 8, and he'd done both at Dortmund, right? And so a little bit that versatility allowed Pep to basically play him a lot and develop his game even more. And I think that when you look at Wharton as a contrast to Eze, Wharton is of the age with the skill set where if you give him to Guardiola this summer, in 2 years' time, he's probably the best English six that is around. Because if you look at Rodri's development, it's been incredible because he's had that time under Guardiola.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit, again, not to pan them, but a little bit they should be panned, because it's like you had Rico Lewis last summer, so you had not one reason to go and as soon as you've lost out on Bellingham, Rice, and Paquetá, you stop at that point. You go, all right, we're not going to buy anybody now. There's no need to buy anybody. Why would you then go and buy a player who, from the outside, we're all sat there going, that's a really average signing. That's got Calvin Phillips written all over it. And then it ends up being more or less that thing.
we're forgetting it's a long season. Sorry, I'll get to the super chats because I feel people obviously have been very nice. Sean Kramer just said, I lived for these Ahsan and Steve transfer streams for years. Typey City Blues checking in, ready for 5 in a row. Sean, you're a legend, mate. I always find it wild, by the way. I'm sure you feel the same, Ahsan, when you and people get in touch from every corner of the world. You think we're sat here just talking nonsense into our microphones, and people listen from everywhere. You know, like it just blows my mind. Thank you, Sean. You're a legend, mate. And it feels weird because I've known your name, Sean, for like a decade now. It's crazy. It's absolutely wild. Sean, thank you so much. And also, Sir Alan Petmancini said, going to be upset if we sell our kids, Rico and Bob. Yeah, 1,000,000,000%. And that obviously touches on what we're talking about Rico Lewis. And I was going to say, we forget because it feels like such a long time ago, but you pass your mind back to the start of last season, which feels like forever ago. But Rico was playing every Champions League game and being excellent. You know, like he was being brilliant in that Champions League. You know, look away at RB Leipzig and having a cracking game. You know, in the centre midfield and I was at the Leipzig game away because I was doing some stuff with TNT and incredible stadium, great atmosphere. The Germans are so vociferous. You know, it's so passionate. And Rico darting about like so smartly, so intelligently. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Nunes because I feel like he's misprofiled as a Man City player. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think he's not a City player. But I've not seen anything anywhere near as smart as that little performance there or what we saw from Rico. I think Rico is, you know, we all know Pep's mentioned his height a few times, which unfortunately maybe, you know, Pep sees that as a slight issue, but we can't deny his effects on the pitch. And you think you're right. I feel like we should not have thrashed around. If anything, that Nunes signing was very un-Manchester City. Like in previous years, we've gone, we didn't get the guy we want, you're playing false nine. We didn't get the guy we want, we're going to have no centre-back and then we'll get Diaz.
And they'd signed Kovacic. And they'd already signed Kovacic. So you've already signed a guy who was kind of like a Gundo replacement. Even if it's not like for like, you've brought a body in, right? That has got experience, has got some level of pedigree where you just don't need to panic. So to then panic and go and buy Nunes.
I wonder if the Walker issue, quite late into the summer, might have affected it because I wasn't sure if we need a right back. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's weird because we just talked about all this, and then you could argue now that what City are doing this summer is not panicking and they're trying to be calm. Maybe they're going back to that. And
I'll back them.
Yeah,
I'll back them. I think that's the right thing to do now. I think you've got to sit tight, hope that somebody makes an offer for Nunes. And move from there, and also keep an eye on what happens with Ederson and with De Bruyne. But the main thing is the only position that because we've not really even talked about it. We've signed Savio. It's going to be an amazing signing. It's going to be like, exciting, you know, wing players back. So that's going to be amazing. And so the only real issue we've got is centre mid, but you can't resolve that without letting a body go. Bearing in mind, you still need to shift Phillips and Cancelo as well. I think their entire focus will be, let's see what offers we get from where. And then, because they'll have a list.
Yeah.
We know, I think it's Dom Smith, who writes for The Standard, who's very close to Crystal Palace. He wrote a story at the start of the summer. Wharton is on City's list. You know, they view him. They view him as a future City player. So that means that there is a world in which they would potentially, if they felt he was gettable and somebody made an offer for Nunes, there's no reason why they wouldn't take that opportunity and go, you know what, even if we have to pay 70, I don't think it costs more than £70 million.
No, you're probably right. Yeah, given the profile and age and so on.
Yeah, even if we got to pay 70, it's better pay 70 now than wait a year, have him have another season like the 6 months he's just had, have everybody wanting him, and then find yourself in a much more competitive situation.
The thing is with Wharton, and I'm banging a drum here, hopefully, but like to me, we've talked before about, you know, passing the eye test a little bit, and I want to see a player come to City who looks like a Man City player already. You know, they look like they have, well, they look like they have space around them. They look like they take it on the right foot all the times. They turn into space. They just drop the shoulder nicely. They know how to pass and move, and the weight of the pass is perfect. And Wharton, when I look at him, he reminds me of young Michael Johnson, and obviously I'm emotionally attached to him because he went to my school and I knew him personally. It's one of those things where I just see a really elegant footballer, and everyone, a lot of people go, "Oh, he's English, you get hyped for it." No, I don't give a shit where they're from. I really don't. I mean this in a like, I am not an overtly patriotic person. I'm a Man City fan, not necessarily an England fan, even though I'm following them. So I don't care where they're from. I just want to see special footballers at Manchester City. You know, like I think I do actually feel like Wharton, what he's done coming up from Blackburn, and then stamping his authority in the Premier League that quickly in Aston Villa, Palace team that looked reinvigorated, largely because of him, I'd argue. I think he's a special footballer, and I think he was great for England when he played as well. So, and he also left-footed as well. Oh, come on, man! He fits all.
Anybody who's unsure, go and watch his performance at Anfield from 2 or 3 months ago.
Watch him dominate United as well. You know, I know it's only United.
For me, the thing about the Anfield game is, if you look at how Liverpool press, and then you look at what he did around that press, it's one of the most impressive performances from a young player I've seen at Anfield, because they tried to press him off the park and he played the ball through them almost every time. And that ability to know, like, to kind of positionally and from a passing range point of view, to know when to play it forward, which area to play it in, and to play it. So almost like it's that. So one of the criticisms I've got of Jude Bellingham, right, is that it feels like he doesn't have a picture of the game in his head. It feels 100%. Like when the ball comes to him, he chews it. He needs 5 seconds to look around and know what to do. For me, what separates the good from the geniuses in midfield is when, as the ball's coming to you, you know what you're doing next.
Yeah.
Wharton, he knows what he's doing next. De Bruyne, he knows what he's doing next.
You can't
Foden,
teach that, by the way. You can't teach that. You have that or you don't.
He knows what he's doing next. These lads, they're just on another planet. And I think that it's a lot of it is just between their ears. It's the intelligence. And that's maybe why I've fallen madly in love with Adam Wharton.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And anyone who's not sure, just go and do the YouTube thing, watch it. But the best thing about Adam Wharton compilation, it's not like goals and assists. It's just lovely touches and lovely delicate passes. And it's so satisfying to watch because you're like, oh, he's a Rolls Royce of a footballer. And you see shades of a young Gundogan there or whatever every now and then. And the control and the awareness. Yeah, I mean, he's my dream signing. Right, I know we haven't got loads left. Uzi missed the start. And there's a comment for you, mate. You know, what kicks you rocking today, Ahsan? You got to get that in. Therefore, we don't want to see them. With all due respect, I'm sure you got wonderful feet, but we'll see that. I know you've been for a run as well, so definitely don't want to see him. Guys, thanks very much for watching this. We're going to have to shoot. I've got to get a little man to bed. But I hope you enjoyed that chat. Do let us know in the comments below what you make of the weird saga that is Manchester City's transfer window. I find it interesting, man. I find it really interesting. Louis, thank you so much.
I suspect we'll be back later in the summer with a very different conversation to the one we're having
always
now.
I still feel there's a twist of some kind. I don't know what it is, but there's going to be something. I don't really buy that City's business is savvy and done. In one way, there's going to be something that happens because there's the big looming spectre of Saudi money in football. City are all aware of the problems, as you said. There are players to try and move on. We just have to be patient. And the Copa will be done soon. The Euros will be done soon. We'll see. Louis, thank you so much, mate, for all your support as always. You're top bloke, Louis. Right, guys, we're gonna leave it there. Check out 9320. Lovely stuff over there as always. Link in the description. I tell you, you will not regret it. It's the perfect podcast for when you're doing your dishes, you're traveling to work, or even when you're working, you're getting away, listen to some City chat. For now, though, I'm gonna leave it there. Subscribe. Ahsan, thank you so much, my friend. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, guys. In a bit.